won't be held to anything I say, but hopefully it's fine.
Yeah. So basically,
Okay.
like, I'm gonna interview you about like your experience. You work at Deloitte, right? Deloitte. Okay. Very cool. That's like my dream. I'm a accounting major.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you're doing which classes in accounting have you taken so far?
I took one and two, and then now I'm in intermediate one.
Who is your accounting one and two teacher,
Rotten.
professor? Big fan. She's so
Yeah.
great.
She's so good. I love her. Yeah. She teaches so much, like so well. Like it's hard, but it's so good. Yeah.
She's very, very thorough. Um, and like just runs a really structured class, which is like really beneficial, especially for accounting, which could seem all over the place, but then if it's presented well, um, like it's easier to learn than if it was not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like working at Deloitte?
I do. We're still a little bit busy. I'm in taxes, so I guess a little bit about myself. I am in taxes. I graduated Stern in 2021, and I started immediately after, so I did not do a master's. Um, I took my first CPA the summer after I graduated, and then I took three while I worked.
Wow.
The first year, so I finished with all within a year. Um, I'm in the business tax service group. So in a lot of offices, that just means like a very general, like touches a lot of things. In the New York office in 30 Rock, it is pretty split out between groups and different service lines. So I mostly deal, or what my group is supposed to deal with is commercial, um, corporate clients. So that could be anything from big, you know, malls or department stores, fashion that we know of, or um, it could be like some of our clients are yogurt brands, like really all over the place, could be very different. Sports
So
teams,
cool.
could be all different types of things. I happen to have been deployed to different groups within BTS that work on hedge funds and investment management and financial services. So I really have gone to see a bunch of things. But because of that, when you have a lot of clients, you have a lot of busy times. And in tax over audit, I don't know if I didn't know what I wanted to do. Especially it's hard and stern. Like you're a lot of times when you have to interview and apply for things, you haven't even taken the classes yet.
Yeah.
Um, in audit, they've one busy season, and in tax, you have two. But it kind of lasts depending on when your deadlines are. So I have a deadline on the 15th. That's why I was a little bit slow in answering.
Okay.
Last night I was in the office very late, but usually it doesn't happen. So all in all, it's good. And I got very lucky. I work with one of a girl I went to seminary and Stern with. So we like sit in the office together. And everyone on my team is really, really great. But but it's been good so far.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions related to challenges that you face. So the first one is, what is the most significant like challenges that you encountered as an Orthodox Jew working in the secular workplace, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Question. Um, I think in general, and like I'm sure everyone in your class will have different responses of like what they found in their interviews. I think sometimes depending on like I don't think there was one challenge. I think that challenges and how they're faced could change, which is a cool thing over time. Um, in terms of um like how you're present or I guess could change over time because let's say like you're new, right? So when you're new, challenges that you face could be so different than when you're already in the system a bit for a
Mhm.
few different reasons. One, when you're new, you're establishing yourself. So the same way that you were saying your teacher speaks a lot about consistencies, right? In general, as we both know, every Jew, practices differently, looks different. Some things could be really important to them. Some things could be less important. Some people, do this, and some people do that. And it's
Yeah.
from our, it's nuanced, and that's, a part of keeping halacha and a part of um, everyone's like different journey and different makeup of themselves. But to an outer person, right, you really, when you go into a secular workplace, you're representing to them because there's such a lack of knowledge. Even you were saying like you learn so much. So imagine someone who really doesn't know anyone, right? So if they know one
Yeah.
person, that's what like Judaism is to them. But let's say they don't know anybody. then that's what Judaism is to them. Let's say they know five people, but those five people keep different things, right? So then it's like you really don't know who you're going to be speaking to, but you also don't know yet how you're being perceived because you're new. So I'll give you an example of being new. Um, Two examples, which I definitely think were harder, does not represent being in the workplace. I don't think. I think it just matters of who you speak to and people's exposure. And it's just all about like educating in the proper way. So one of my first examples was I was I guess three. I was reminiscing about this last night actually to one of my senior managers. We were in the office together. It was very late, and I was saying that I actually was supposed to be on her one of her other clients when I started a few years ago. But when I started, all the Chagim were in September that year, right? So this year they were in October, but Rosh Hashanah that year was really, really early. And when I started in August, that's one of our busiest times, August to September. And it was once I communicated that I keep the holidays, which means that I won't be, online from this date to this date. But obviously, I'm willing to make up my work beforehand and after. I was almost like a little bit, I was removed from the client, which totally makes sense, meaning it's a busy time. They needed people to work on it. So if I was going to be gone, I was going to be gone. It was fine. But I think in the beginning, it's a challenge to establish yourself. And I think that people are more fearful to discuss like, PTO, which is like paid time off, because um, it's almost like it's an awkward thing to be like, I'm taking off so much time when other people aren't. But I think that that's just a way to, I think you just have to communicate it and express and explain why you're doing what you're doing and give really clear boundaries. Um, so I guess that's like my first thing. It wasn't a challenge. It was just funny. I was talking about that last night. Something that did happen with Shabbos was when I started, I was the next summer I started, I was put on a team and and the whole year I had never really had a problem with saying that I log off early. Um, but I was on a team that was very, very intense and I sent out an email. Um, and then the next week, I got another really intense email like everyone needs to say like when you're not online on the weekends, whatever. So I responded like I'll be off. And the head person on the client it was very intense response of like you'll always be offline, something like that. I don't think she just understood. It happens, yeah. I just don't think she had like fully understood what Shabbos was. I guess she had never worked with someone like that. Happens to be, and I guess this is a challenge, but also really made me feel very nice. Someone on the email chain had emailed it to another manager who went to YU, who was really like liked in the team and very like he like represented in that team Jews. And he reached out to me and said, I just want to like speak to you. Are you okay with that email? I'm happy to like communicate on your behalf. You should never feel like pressured that you have to re-explain yourself. So it was super nice that he was like just checking in on me because I was new. So it was the first time that I was just like kind of communicating on my own behalf. And I guess this isn't, again, it's a challenge. I think it was just more like my first obstacle. Um, my first like post busy season client get together. I started during COVID, so like we weren't really in person. I think when you're in person, people like see you or like they know that you're doing something different or they know, let's say you're not handshake, whatever it is. When you're over COVID, a lot of these things don't come out. Besides for like if you're off on the weekends. So this really wasn't a challenge. It was just the first question I had to ask was we were all going out to like a really fancy steak place. And I didn't know if I should go or not. Obviously, this is something that I heard. Obviously, people go and it's a thing that people do. But I also wanted to make sure I understood, like, what were the repercussions? What's even like the halachic conversation around these things? Obviously, everyone holds to different things. So I would know someone that wouldn't go. I would know people that I have a friend, which I think speaks to what your teacher was talking about consistency. I think that it's interesting. She's already said that she keeps kosher, but then she'll still order stuff and just not eat it. In my head, it's like, that's just so confusing. Like, are you
Yeah,
trying to fake them out? Like she'll be
yeah,
like, I'll just cut my food, but then I'm like, but then they don't know that you're not like it's confusing.
yeah.
I called my rabbi from seminary, and we just spoke about most people. And again, this is something that everyone has to decide for themselves. What I ended up doing was they ordered me in food from La Marais, which is a kosher restaurant in the city. And what you have to do when you bring in food is you can't just like bring it in yourself because it's a restaurant, but you do catering. And when it is catered, these restaurants who always do this for meetings know that they're double wrapping it. It's sealed in every direction. I mean, I would have needed like a pocket knife to open this. It was crazy. There was like tape everywhere. And the bag is sealed, everything's wrapped, foil, whatever. Um, so that was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened is my rabbi explained a lot of people there's kind of like two components. Either it has to be very clear that you're not eating the food. So let's say right, because you don't want any like Mara sign. You don't want anyone like walking by the restaurant and saying like, "Oh, this is kosher. I'm sure we could eat there." Or like that's a little questionable. There's someone that looks super visibly Jewish that's sitting there. So the first thing is to make sure that it's very clear you're either not eating at all, or if you're going to eat, make it extremely clear that you're eating something different. So, some people, if it's double wrapped, would, put it on a plate that you can order from La Marais and they would warm it because it's double wrapped. For me personally, the whole double wrapping and sending it to the waiter, I was just like, I can't deal with that. So they just literally brought it to me. I was the one that opened it. It was clearly in plastic, with a sign, and everyone else was not eating what I was eating. But all those things were things that I had to think about of like entering a non-kosher restaurant. And what to do for that. It is interesting because obviously I've spoken about this more recently. It actually came up last week because I had two events. Someone was leaving, so there was like a happy hour for her, and one was like a bowling event with my client. Um, but it's interesting because like some people, there's obviously writings that like even just going to an event with non-Jews and like socializing would also be a problem. So in all these things, I think everyone just has to choose what they're comfortable with. But I think there is a consciousness, what you were speaking about before, of like how you hold yourself, um, is is super important. So I think like let's say like and everyone has to make those own choices. Like I'm definitely not the person to say what everyone should do. But what I try to do is like let's say if I went to a happy hour, I usually I wouldn't order a drink, even though like I would drink at a wedding. First of all, for me, I'm just like the whole like deciding what and if it's kosher, that would just stress me out. I'd rather not. But I think there are small things that even if you're going to drink and you're not going to get crazy with everybody and you're going to drink, that's totally fine. But then on that, then there's more things to think about of like, is it a glass? Or, if they're putting lemons or limes in it, you probably wouldn't want to use that because you don't know where the knife was and like lemons like citrus, all these things are just, I think all these things are doable, but in terms of like challenges, is just something to think about before. So you have a game plan going in, and being consistent with it. So like, let's say sometimes, yeah, everyone's super receptive if like you're doing it for a reason. But I think it's just like consistency and thinking about all these things before. So those were like the first as I started, just things I had to think about. But in terms of challenges, once you're there, I think an example of happened to me last night was once you're there and you have already established what you do and people know what you do, people are super receptive to it. Last night we were all sitting in a room, two people that are not Jewish, do not keep kosher, and me. And usually they would order food and I would just order on my own. But in this case, it was very nice. We were just sitting there, nothing came up about dinner, and the senior manager, the head of the engagement, was like, "Oh, like we should all order kosher deluxe. Like I haven't had that Chinese in so long." So I thought that was like super, super nice that it wasn't, she didn't say, "Let's order food like Brooke, you can order whatever you want." Instead, they all ordered kosher with me. And then even when it came, we were all discussing something and I was saying, "Oh, when it comes, it's wrapped," because they were all laughing about how taped it was. And then someone opened the bag, and then the other woman was like, Brooke, did you have to open that bag?" And I was like, "It's a paper bag. Everything else is sealed." I'm staring at it. Like, but I think people are really open to it. It's just being open, and appropriate in the way that you explain things.
Wow, this is so good. Wow, it's so nice. I'm like learning all about this. It's so nice that they did that for you.
It was
Wow.
really, really, and it happens to be like some people don't know anything, and some people, like the person that said that, when she was a staff, and now she's not a staff at all, she's very high up, she worked on her biggest client was a partner and a senior manager, so that's like top and top, were just from Jews. So she like grew up in the culture of like, yeah, of course we're going to order Mendy's tonight, and of course we're going to order Tiberius. She said she used to work across from Stern. So she was like, I knew kosher Midtown, all these things, but like
Oh,
that's just in her head, it's so normal to do. But let's say, imagine us now, the other person in the room, hopefully this would be normal to him, and the next time it ever happened, he would be super conscious of it. So I think sometimes you just get luckier, like you work with people that know, and sometimes you need to explain. And I also think like sometimes like not everything has to be explained, but like what needs to be explained, can be explained for sure.
so I have two questions about what you said. So when you were talking about Shabbat and they sent out an email, like just let us know what days on the weekend you have to take off, and then you told them you have to like take off for Shabbat, obviously, and then the late one of the who got upset at you? Like someone got upset at
No
you?
upset. I think it happens to be, I think there was like a language barrier of also just like the person.
Okay.
I think it was more, I don't know if she was confused what I was saying or if she didn't know that it was every week that it happens. So like majority of people I work with now, like literally last week, obviously the time changed, and someone asked me to do something at 3. Um, and my husband is a rabbinic intern in Teaneck, so we had to go very early. And I said, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, and then I literally wrote in parentheses, like, with the time change, it's a little bit of a crunch, but like,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna make it. I probably wouldn't have said that if I hadn't worked with this person and he knew me. But because I've already developed a relationship, and I know he knows about the time change, I said it like that. I think it all just matters about communication. I think the person didn't mean, I think she was more like, it sounded like an aggressive, everyone has to be working. And I think because I was so new, someone was like, "Oh, do you think, Brooke is stressed about that email?" But again, it's not a negotiable thing. So like it's just more about over communicating. I also think in general, halacha, Judaism, work in general, I think that everything, I mean, I'm a big believer that everything is like communication and presentation. Even people that don't have Shabbos to worry about, I'll work with my staff now. Like if someone has a real reason and presents it nicely and says like I won't be on from blink or blink, that's totally fine. Like everyone's like reasonable, normal. Everyone wants everyone to have lives. I think that in general, where there's breakdown is when people like don't have reasonable expectations. So like I'll give you an example totally separate from halacha. Um, Someone I work with, someone my position, or no, I did, and I was very confused. And then I told a higher up because I was like, what? I asked her if she would be online because I needed help at some point today. And she said, I don't think so. I have to go grocery shopping. And I was like, what? Like, grocery shopping doesn't take 12 hours,
Yeah.
right? So, like, on one hand, it was weird, but I think in general, it's just a life lesson that, like, if she would have said, hey, Brooke, I have to go grocery shopping and a few other errands, I'll be online at 3 o'clock, right? Totally fine. So
Yeah.
that's the same regard as like Shabbos. Like you could say, I can't do it. It's starting. Or you could say, I'm so sorry. I have to log off soon, but I'm going to log back on Saturday night at 7 o'clock or when the Sabbath ends or whatever you want to say, to see if there's anything else I can finish up for you. Most of the time, they're not going to leave anything for you. But being conscious to offer your time, is something that people should do because I think that this summer, if everyone, I had a client that everyone was working every Saturday for like a month, right? And I didn't have to work, which is great. But I think that you have to be, I think some people take it as um, like kind of like a given versus, and you don't have to be apologetic for taking off because that's your religion. But I think there's like a consciousness of like appreciating that the people worked on Saturday. And like if you can pick up something for them on Sunday so that they can get a break, that's a very nice thing to do. And I think that like it goes back to like what you were talking about of like presenting yourself well. That anywhere you go in life, right? The workplace, the grocery store, down the street, anywhere, you're really representing so many people. And I think that like it's heightened that like it's not like, oh, you want people to like you that you work with. It's like you really want people to think that you're trying their best because then when you have to take off, you know, 3 days in the middle of the week in a busy season for a holiday, no one's saying, "Ugh, that girl, she doesn't do anything." And classic, she's Jewish and like she
Yeah.
doesn't work, right? That's horrible. It's such a like bad like connection to Judaism. Instead, they'll be like, "She's so great, like, and she's observant and like has values, and they want to support you through that." And I think that like it's just an important thing to always think about that like all these things you're going to do no matter what. But you want people to be receptive to them, and they should be. Like, it's not your, like, I'm not saying that it's up to you to make them receptive. It's really inappropriate if they're not. Um, but I think it just comes with with communicating and like being conscious that you are representing a lot of things.
Mhm. Wow. Thank you.
Of
Um,
course.
so
Do you have
an
any more questions? Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
I have two more questions. So
Great.
another question is, was there something that was like really unique or like threw you off that like you didn't expect would happen while you were working so far? And like what did you do to like handle that situation?
Trying to think. Like halakhically?
Like you said a lot. Like I feel like with the email like that threw you off. Um
Yeah. Again, the email wasn't like it was literally like a small thing that happened. It really wasn't
no,
such a
yeah.
crazy thing. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Um hmm,
I have I have a question
think
about
about it. Yeah.
the Chagim. Like did So when you weren't like they took you off that client because of the Chag, obviously, because there were so many days for like Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah. Um, were you upset about that? And like,
So I think that that's kind of like the what I was going back to about like it's not always I don't think that I was saying that like always you're going to be taking off clients. I've been here for 4 years and like I've never been taken off a client because I had a holiday.
yeah,
And all the more so like people I still take off time. Um, I think it was just like I had just started. So like they just put me on a different client and it wasn't such a big deal. Um, I think though like it does teach you that like in the beginning things happen just because like it's not necessarily because I was doing that, it's just like scheduling didn't work. But like in the same light, now that I have clients like and I have a reputation and my schedule is set for those things, that wouldn't happen because it's already like moving like 2 days 3 days doesn't really make a difference and people work around you to make sure that you still meet deadlines like my biggest client me and the senior manager are from so that means two people out of the whole team are taking off or last year my biggest client me and another person my position he was also Shomer Shabbos from so it's not like both of us were just never working it's just more like it happened to be the scheduling um I think also something to that I never I mean not thought about but it's obviously something to do with like um keeping taking off time for holidays was like when you're taking off time for holidays that means that like that's a lot of time right so that's a lot of your days off like it's interesting like I speak to other friends that like teaching also like it's so hard because if you travel before a holiday you get docked 2 days versus one. So I think there's benefits to every and negatives to every career. So it's good for us that we can work remote and it's super flexible, but like you don't get time off for holidays. So you're taking that time off.
yeah,
But that being said, that like I've kind of started to do was like in the beginning, all of my time off would go to holidays. Which means like when you're going logging off for Yom Kippur, they're all like, enjoy your time off, and you're like, I'm not sitting on the beach here.
yeah,
Um, but I think now, like just to give you an example, God willing, I'm gonna be going to Israel in December. We get off from Christmas to New Year's, like get a full winter break, like they give us time off, which is
wow,
great. Um, and I was a little bit stressed because like, you're going all this way and like already spending the money, and everyone else takes off vacation. So I didn't know, like, should I take off more vacation, even though I don't have so many days off, because all of them have gone to the Chagim.
yeah,
So I was speaking to my senior manager when we were thinking about booking, and And it wasn't, she didn't pull up my chart and say, you took a lot of time off. She's now knows because she's been working with me long enough that most of the days that I take off are because I have to take off. So she was like, of course you should take off 40. Like, again, it's all the development and making sure that like you've earned that spot and it makes sense and you can do it this year. It doesn't mean I've always taken off a lot of time on vacation.
Yeah.
Or even like 2 years ago, I had to go somewhere in the summer and like I spoke to everybody, like all the clients I was on to see if it was a possibility, right? So all those things like you learn how to do and you have to do that in general. I think that that just like comes with time to like know, what you're going to be doing at certain times of the year. And like you know, just people knowing you. So like my friend that I work with from Stern went on is a mission last year in Israel. And she was so stressed about it because it was like during a deadline. And like we definitely both would not have voiced our opinion our first year, like kind of just like getting to know each other, like the whole group. And like at first we didn't even say like we kept kosher, like we just kind of let people being like, why aren't we eating? Like we keep kosher. Like it's just all about like becoming comfortable with these things and like
Yeah.
being able to express yourself. But when she met with like the head partner of our group and said, like, I really want to go, it's during this time, I have a deadline, but like it's really important to me. He's like, be so safe, good luck. Like, of course you need to go. Again, it's just all like things happen and you have to address them. But like I think in the end, like it's all doable. Um, but that's just like my plug of like it is interesting. Most of our holidays go to like
Yeah.
Jewish holidays and you're not really like vacationing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Like we got all of the month off of for October, obviously, but like it didn't even feel like a break because
I know. Yeah,
like
you're like,
the
I'm running
top.
all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then like right when we got back, it was midterm, so it's like
I
crazy.
know. This year was very hard. I feel like it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
So to wrap up, what is one piece of advice that you could give me? I'm working in Texas actually this summer, and it's like gonna be like so like I don't know anybody, so I'm like kind of nervous but like excited because I don't know like there's like holidays that like I'm gonna have to like Tisha B'Av, um, and Shabbat. So like, what advice could you give me for that?
Where are you going to be working?
I'm working at JP Morgan. Like,
Awesome. So fun.
yeah.
That's really awesome. I think in terms of Shabbat, I think that really it's just about again, I don't know if you're going to be placed on a team or if it's going to be like I know at Deloitte, like interns have like onboarding advisors. So I'm sure you'll have like a buddy or a coach or an onboarding advisor. I think that that's something just to ask them the first time you meet them and say like, I don't work from, and I think it's really, sometimes don't assume people know. I always say I keep the Sabbath. I do not work from sunset, um, Friday to sunset Saturday. Even now, like I've got, again, it just depends who you work with because one of my bosses is like from, he'll be like Friday afternoon, he's like, did you cook yet? Like, and I'm like, okay, like I'm fine. Like we're good. Like it, again, everyone's just so different. But I think just maybe speak to them about it and say like, do you think the best thing to do um is to email who you're working or I guess honestly tell them and then once you get assigned work if you're ever in a position to not finish something on Friday, and it is helpful being on in the summer because like
Right.
summers,
Starts.
are so late.
Yeah.
But I think that you should, if ever you're at a point where you can't hand something in, then you would just ping or email that person and say, I'm Sabbath observant. Here's what I have so far. I'm happy to hop on a call with you to discuss. But would it be okay if I could finish this on Saturday night? I think always just asking and being communicative is the way to go. And the same with holidays. Interns definitely like I would definitely ask your coach because like I know them taking off is like a different protocol.
Mhm.
But like no one's gonna say you can't. It's just about making sure like you don't want to disappear one day. That's not the
Yeah.
best look. Um, but making sure that you communicate. And I guess in general, just like keeping it in terms of your class, when you were saying that like there's a lot going on and like you're learning so much and like to keep in mind, I think that like in life the same way that you develop yourself as a student, you develop yourself, you're going to develop yourself as an employee, you're going to develop yourself as whatever you're doing, a sports player, or this, or that, a sibling, and great. I think it's just like being really like honest and comfortable with yourself and like letting, um, like I think sometimes when there's so many things to think about, it's almost like paralyzing because you can't just be yourself. I think everyone comes across very, very differently in work. Obviously, baseline is being like appropriate and professional, but like I have a joke. Two of my very good friends from Stern work at Deloitte with me, and we all joke that like we all wear, and we're all SNES and we're all right, but like what we wear to work is so different. Like I would probably look like what they would wear on Sundays because like I'm already wearing a skirt and I wear a shirt, but like one of my friends looks like Ann Taylor, and then one of my friends looks like everyone has like their like presentations, right? But we're all being SNES as we're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and we're all being true to ourselves. So like someone may wear a little bit shorter of a sleeve, some may not, but doesn't mean that like nobody doesn't see them as observant Jews because they're holding themselves like that. But I think that like even like personalities, my one friend, she just has a personality that is like already like professional versus me. Like I'm a little bit more myself in work, but I don't think that like I come across um you know, not holding myself how I'd want to. I think that you just have to like be comfortable in what you're doing and also realize you're spending a lot of time with people you work with. Like it's okay to be yourself and be open, but in the way that anyone else would. So I think that like, you know, and again, everyone holds differently. Personally, if someone shook my hand, I would shake it back. That's something that, I made the decision for myself. But then I was having this whole discussion actually with my husband a few nights ago because when I came back from bowling, there was someone else there and or maybe it wasn't bullet, it was a different event, and she like hugged someone and I was just like whoa, but like again that's something that she had to decide what she was comfortable with. I mean she was not my friend, like a random person, like woman, but like
She
I
was
think that
religious?
again but yes, but I'm saying but I'm saying that not in a judgmental way. I'm
Oh
saying
yeah,
that as
yeah,
in
yeah.
everybody, I'm sure she would not touch men. And again, some people do. Like I think I'm saying it more as in everyone has to um and maybe that was just a random thing I saw, so like don't write about it in your paper,
Oh,
but I'm saying some people I work with, if someone reach out to shake their hand, they'd say, I'm so sorry, I don't touch the opposite gender. I think for me when I started in COVID, I never like saw people, so it really didn't matter. If that being said, if I was ever in a situation where I was working with someone a lot and they like always were like shaking my hands or they were always tapping me, I would see something, right? But if I'm meeting someone for the first time and last time and they just reach out quickly, I don't find that like for something that I have to say about, like speak out about. But there are people that totally would. So, and I'm not saying, that person, I'm not saying that person is more right or less right or whatever. Everyone has to do what they've looked into and feel comfortable with. Um, but I think like that's just like my plug of don't get so overwhelmed with everything. Like even if you're in the workplace and you're like, oh, I'll give an example with like you were talking about coffee. So like we also have like machines and stuff. We've one seltzer machine and no one ever had it until we realized that all the seltzers literally have an OU on them. But I would never make coffee because it's the same question you guys were talking about.
mhm.
So it's just like it's all these things that like they're not yeses or nos. They're just like sometimes you just have to ask a question to a rabbi or you just have to think about it more, maybe inquire more about it. But just in general, like I think just don't get so overwhelmed with like Shabbos and shaking hands and saying like even if you say like you went to Yeshiva University, most people are like, oh, you're Jewish. So like you already don't even have to out yourself. Um, so so I think it's great. I think that all these things like come randomly, but it's not like you're being like inundated with like scary emails and times where we have to say to keep kosher and like they come one in a blue moon and like it's a learning experience in general.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Of course.
Yeah, this was
I'm
great.
really here for anything. So if there's anything you want me to clarify, you can text me.